So for starters, we're going to set our central heat set point. And central heat set point is right here, the radiator symbol. And when I press on that, you'll see the radiator symbol appear on the home screen. And now I can adjust my central heat set point. So what type of convectors do you have? An example, if it's a high temp system, I'll need 180. So I will adjust this up in that example to 180. Or maybe it's an in-floor radiant and max temperature I want is 130 on a 0-degree day. So adjust your temperature of what you need, and to store that, very simply, press the select button again. We've now stored, in this example, 180 degree set point. Next, we're going to power off our display. We need to get into the installer level, and that is the mode button, which is right here. I'm going to press and hold the mode button for about 5 seconds until the display livens up. And here we're on parameter 1. 1EH is our error history. Next, we want to scroll to parameter 4. That's our outdoor high for our reset curve. And we have some defaulted values in here that are very conservative. So you may want to adjust those to really take advantage of condensing and high efficiency. So in my example, I'm going to take my outdoor high at 68 degrees. This is not warm weather shutdown. This is the outdoor high. And I'm going to drop that value. To do that, very simply press the scroll select button until that value is flashing at you. Now I'll make an adjustment. And in this example, I'm going to turn this down to 55 degrees. To store it, press the scroll select button again. Next, I'll go to parameter 5, which is my outdoor low. In here, we're defaulted for 30 degrees. And I'll use the example of New England or Boston, where the design day is 10 degrees. So instead of 30 degrees, at maybe 10 degrees, I'll deliver my 180 degree supply temperature. So make the adjustment, press the scroll, and now you can turn this down to your design day. And I use the example of 10 degrees above zero. However, if you have an older dwelling that doesn't have a lot of insulation or some drafty windows, you might want to bring that up a little bit. So in this example, I'll say at 15 degrees of outdoor air, we're going to deliver the 180 degrees. And I'm going to store that, I'll press the scroll select button. Next, I'll continue through, and parameter 6 is the central heat high. So that's the max temperature you're allowed to adjust from here on this main display. So keep in mind, if you have in-floor radiant, and in-floor radiant, again, max temperature might be 128 or 130 degrees. You do not want to leave this value here at 180, because then a customer could come in, hit that radiator symbol, and take that from 130 to 180. So if you're using a in-floor radiant temperature, you want to drop that value down to the max temperature you want. And in that example, I set 130 degrees. What I'm going to do for this example, I'm going to bring this back to 180 because we're using this example as a high temp system. And again, to save it, you'll press the scroll select button to store it. Next is my low temperature. That's my central heat low. So an example of that is at 55 degrees or above, what is the minimum temperature I want to supply to that building? So that's based on your convectors. Example, slant fin baseboard might say 130, or maybe you want to drop that down to 120. And in this example, I'll say at 55 degrees, I only need 125 degree supply temperature. And I'm going to store that as well. Next is your warm weather shutdown. That's parameter 8. And that's defaulted for 68 degrees. So if you like that value, then just leave it there. So again, at 68 degrees or above, the heat will not come on. If you do have an indirect tank tied into your system, the boiler will still operate to provide heat to the domestic tank or indirect tank. So maybe it's elderly housing project, and sometimes they want the heat on at 70 or 72. Again, to make that adjustment, hit the scroll select till it's flashing, and now in this example I'll bring that to 72 degrees. Press that scroll select again, and now I've stored it. So here we've adjusted our outdoor reset curve. So very simply, now that we've stored it, You can come back, just hit the power button, and we're back to normal operation. Now, if you have an indirect tank, and again, we've set up our central heat with our outdoor reset, now what we want to do is get into the indirect tank. So again, I need to get back into that mode button, so what I'm going to do is power it off, press and hold the mode button until my display livens up. And on your indirect tank, we're going to go to parameter 39, okay? What parameter 39 is whether you have an aquastat or an NTC sensor. So, example of that in parameter 39, it's defaulted for aquastat. So is that a mechanical aquastat, or are you using a sensor? And if you are using a sensor, press the scroll select button until it flashes, and then you can choose sensor, okay? And then you would store that again. In our example, we are using an aquastat, so I'm going to come back and choose aquastat. Next, we need to go back to parameter 21. So I'm going to scroll back to parameter 21, in a sense, and this is my domestic storage tank temperature, okay? And the range is from 95 degrees to 180. So what are we using? Are we using a mechanical aquastat, or are we using an NTC sensor? Keep in mind, if I'm using an aquastat and my aquastat is set for 120, I want hotter water leaving the heater to overcome that temperature. So it's an indirect tank, right? So I'm going to press the scroll select button, and I'm going to jack that up to 180. Why? Because we want hotter water for that indirect coil. That way we can satisfy that domestic demand quickly. All right. If I'm using an actual sensor, then I would set that up at 120 or 130 or 140, depending on what the sensor was. And then lastly here is we'll go to parameter 22. And this is your differential, okay? It's defaulted for 7 degrees. The range is from 5 to 30. So an example of that, I might only want a 5-degree differential, so I'll bring that back to 5, press and hold that, and I've stored it. So in this video, we have set up central heat, we set up outdoor reset, and set up the temperatures for the indirect tank. If you have any technical questions, please contact the factory.